Hello, every pony. I am Scholar89, and tonight I will be reading another scary fanfiction for you who are listening this nightmare night. Blind Spot by Alicorn underscore avionics. A fundamentally flawed filly. Blind Spot. Note: this piece contains music. For best result, right-click on the link and select Open in New tab. The orchards of Sweet Apple Acres stretched onward as far as the eye could see, or could gather. Row upon rows of tall, healthy apple trees rustled in the chilled autumn breeze. Sprawling out from the central farmhouse where AppleJack was preparing an early dinner for her family. She wasn't the most organized of chefs. In fact, assessed attested by the stacks of filthy bowls of mixing utensils stacked any place there was free space. But that did nothing to hinder the end result: a delicious homemade casserole for the Apple clan that could rival any Canterlot dish in the taste category. She had just finished preparing the dish for baking and ready to place it in the oven. "Applejack! Applejack!" the youngest apple called out through the fields as she galloped from another school day. "You won't be able to guess what Miss Cherry is teaching us now." The energetic filly burst through the entryway, hardly slowing despite the best efforts of the front door. She skidded to a halt in the kitchen and restlessly awaited her sister's response. Applejack smiled around the pan she had clasped in her mouth. It always lit up her heart to see her little sister so excited, especially for anything school-related. She pondered on the point her sister brought up for a moment while she loaded the oven with her casserole. "You're right, Apple Bloom. I can't right guess if you won't tell me," she teased, tussling her sibling's mane. Skewed the red bow tie she perpetually wore. Skewing the bow tie she perpetually wore. Apple Bloom didn't seem to notice, instead launching into her description of the school day. "Well, Miss Cherry Lee started talking about biology, living things," she happily recalled, following Applejack around the kitchen as she began to clean up after herself. "She told us all about plants and mushrooms and how ponies are kind of flawed." Applejack paused midway through scrubbing a large mixing bowl. "She said what now?" She explained how plants like our apple trees work. No, the other thing. Mushrooms? No, the other thing. About ponies being flawed and all." "Oh!" Apple Bloom's eyes lit up as any fillies would when they realized they had the opportunity to educate an older sibling. "Well, she said every pony's flawed and stuff, 'cause of our eyes being in the wrong place or something. And that's why ponies like to live together." Despite her years of experience deciphering and translating the cryptic language that was Apple Bloom, Applejack couldn't understand a word of her younger sister beyond Cherry's seemingly blatant insult. What reason did she have to say any pony is flawed? Is she really that high up on the hog as Ponyville's most educated mare, second to Twilight, to make such a claim? Applejack's cheeks flushed crimson as she thought of such a mare teaching the younger generations. She caught herself and took a deep breath. This could be just a misunderstanding after all. "Apple Bloom, I'm gonna walk you to school tomorrow and so me and Miss Cherry Lee can have a little talk about her lesson." "Why, don't you have to help Big Mac with the harvest?" "He can handle it while I'm out with you. I just don't think it's right of Cherry Lee to be teaching you that you're all flawed. Sure, no pony's perfect, but that don't mean you're worse off. Shoot, look at little old Derpy. That Pegasus is more wild-eyed than a chameleon, and she still goes through her life no different than you or me, with a smile on her face." She took another breath and steadied herself. "Now go and get Big Macintosh from the field, then wash up for dinner." The walk from the farm to the schoolhouse the next morning passed in silence between the two sisters. Applejack was mulling over just what she'd say to Cherry Lee about Apple Bloom's report from the night before. In her excitement, the little filly could have possibly forgotten key notes on the lesson. She hoped that was the case, at least. If it wasn't, Applejack wasn't sure she'd be able to contain herself. As the small schoolhouse came into view, Apple Bloom zoomed off to find her two closest friends, presumably to get an early start on the day's troublemaking. Outside the main doors to the building stood Cheerly, waving happily to the parents. Waving happily to the parents was they dropped off. I think it's supposed to as they dropped off their foals for the day before heading off to school to work. "Excuse me, Miss Cheerily," Applejack began, bringing her teacher's attention to herself. "Oh, good morning, Applejack," she greeted with a smile. "How are you?" "Fine, I guess," she replied, a little less than unbelievable. "Listen, last night my little sister came home and saying that you were spouting how every pony's flied, something about their eyes. Now, I know you're a respectable mare, and would never insult a pony directly, but that just seems a little mean-spirited. Was there something from yesterday maybe Apple Bloom didn't quite pick up on?" Charlie almost looked hurt by the accusation, but shrugged it off soon after. "Oh, yes, yesterday's lesson did include some challenging topics for young foals to grasp. Plus, she did fall asleep in class more than one occasion. I was simply discussing pony evolution and how we today have a large blind spot behind us." She motioned over her shoulder with a hoof for emphasis. "See, with most prey animals like rabbits, their eyes are on the side of their head, allowing a great field of vision, and a greater chance of spotting a predator. In fact, some rabbits can see completely around themselves without the need to turn their heads. They lack depth perception, however, because the fields of vision from both eyes don't overlap much, just enough to the front of the head to focus on their food. But with ponies, our eyes are on the front of our heads, giving us binocular vision. We can judge distance fairly easily, which helps some of our earliest ancestors in territorial disputes and navigation, but did nothing to help them avoid predators. This is the flaw. With our eyes so far to the front, we're left with a gigantic blind spot behind us. With such a flaw, creatures which hunted early ponies had no trouble capturing them when they were on their own. There was one solution, though: communal living. When a group of 5 early ponies or more gathered together in one place, they could cover more angles and prevent a predator's attack. This trait evolved into our social behaviors today, which is why you'd be hard pressed to find a pony living completely on their own today of their own volition. They just don't survive long alone." She applied yet another smile. "I didn't mean to insult any pony. Does that clear things up?" "Uh, Applejack just sat there for a moment processing the information, or at least made a valiant effort. How this was to be understood by young fillies was beyond her, but it was knowledge not bigotry, that Cheerily was preaching, she had no problem at all. "Yep, sure does. Just make sure all them little fillies understand that. You have a good day now, Miss Cheerily," she said, before heading back for the farm, a cloud of thought still darkening her features. That evening, all was quiet in the Apple homestead. Big Mac had a good start on the field for the day before Applejack returned from meeting with Cheerily, and was out like a light by the time supper was finished. Apple Bloom had a few scrapes and bruises from the day's crusading, and joined Big Mac in slumber soon after she was patched up. Applejack, while just as tired as her siblings, just couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned in her bed, but every time she felt the embrace of sleep beginning to envelop her, thoughts of the morning's biology lesson rushed in to keep her awake. She knew it shouldn't have bothered her as much as it did, but something was just off about the whole thing. Cherry Lee's last line, what did she mean by it? Are there still things that hunt ponies outside of the Everfree, or was that just a slip of the tongue? She must have meant they didn't last too long before seeking friends. Applejack gave an exhausted yawn as her mind continued to rationalize the ordeal. Yep, that was it. Just saying they didn't want to be alone. I can't rightly imagine being without Rainbow, or Twilight, or Flutter. She trailed off as sleep finally took a welcome hold on her, her mind at peace. Her blissful slumber was all at once shattered by Winona leaping to her paws, barking madly while skittering along the wooden floors of the house towards the front door. Applejack glared at the clock as she dragged herself out of bed. Land's sake, Winona, she mumbled while begrudgingly making her way downstairs to the crazed canine, who now anxiously awaited her master at the door. It's 1 in the morning, and I know I took you out before I went to bed. As soon as the door was open wide enough for her to squeeze through, Winona bolted for the western fields, quickly disappearing into the chilled air. Her her incessant barking quickly became the only marker of her location. How she hadn't awoken the rest of the Apple clan or half of Ponyville was beyond Applejack as she chased after the wayward hound. Suddenly, Wyona let loose a series of low, menacing growls. Whatever she had been looking for, she had found it, and was now keeping it in place for her master to determine its fate. Applejack quickened her pace, nearly ramming head-on into several trees in the dark orchard. When she finally got close enough to see just what Winona had corralled, she let out a snarled gasp. Fluttershy? Applejack asked over the malicious growls. Winona, bad girl! Don't you growl at Fluttershy like that! Get on back to the house! She scolded while swatting the dog away from the emotionally distraught Pegasus. Winona reluctantly slunk away towards the farmhouse as her master bade her. I don't know what that. Keeping a weary eye on Fluttershy all the while. What in the hell are you doing out so late, anywho, Fluttershy? Fluttershy looked up at Applejack, her cheeks flushed and discolored from where fresh tears were streaming. Oh, Applejack, I shouldn't have trespassed. I know, but... She hung her head as another fit of sobbing overtook her. It's all right, Sugar Cube, Applejack consoled, placing a forelimb around the mare's shoulder. You know you're always welcome here, no matter how late it gets. Fluttershy looked up, earning a warm smile from Applejack. A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth in reply before the farmer continued. Now just why are you out here all alone at such a late hour? The shy mare frowned and looked away before responding. Well, I was giving my chickens their midnight meal, but one of them got away from me. I chased it all the way here, but then I lost track of it in all these trees, and I realized I was all alone at night, and I was too scared to move, and then Winona showed up and began growling at me. She whimpered at the frightened memory. Oh, well, don't get too worked up about Winona. The old girl got more bark in her than bite. Anyhow, how about you stay at my place for the rest of the night? And leave no pony to care for the animals at the cottage? I can't do that. All right, then. What if I walk with you back to your place? Would you be okay with that? Fluttershy mumbled in affirmative, and the two set off in silence toward her cottage through the cold night. After a few minutes, Applejack tried starting a conversation, but every time she thought of a topic, the only one which surfaced was Charlie's biology lesson. Oh, what the hey? She lacks that critter stuff anyway. She might take to it. Hey, Fluttershy. The mare gave a twitch at the sudden mention of her name. You won't believe what Miss Charlie's teaching them foals at the schoolhouse now. You mean about the blind spots? She asked. Oh, yes. I ran into her the other day, and she told me all about them. It's really awful, especially with those things around. She shuddered. Huh? What things? Fluttershy shrunk into herself as she continued along the path, uncomfortable with the subject. Well, most ponies think everything which hunts ponies stays in the everfree forest. But I've heard of these new creatures that don't mind going outside the forest at all, she explained, her eyes darting about nervously. What do they look like? They have terrible razor-sharp claws as griffins couldn't match for snatching and tearing ponies apart, she continued, now visibly shaking. Vicious fangs, and the fur is almost always matted with the blood of other animals. The Pegasus froze on the wooden trail, fear first forcing her to curl up into a self-protective ball. Come on now, Fluttershy. That can't rightly be something like that around here. Not so close to Ponyville, Applejack said to the mares, more to sturdy her own nerves than anything. They know, Applejack? About the blind spot. They use it when they hunt ponies. And they don't hunt alone either. They work in pairs. One to draw a pony out all alone with no pony else around. And what? The other strikes. A sharp pain blazed throughout Applejack's body as she was viciously tackled to the ground from behind, slender talons gorging deep into her sides. With her stomach pressed into the dirt, she couldn't see the dark form pinning her. She tried to yell, but with her attacker bearing their full weight upon her, breathing became difficult. Fluttershy, go and get help! She eked out while squirming to displace the beast, only managing to drive the talon deeper. Fluttershy looked up from her protective ball towards Applejack and the beast, but she only stared, seemingly frozen in place. Did you hear me? Go get help! Applejack's blood chilled as Fluttershy let out a toothy smile, slowly crawled across her face, all signs of fear seemingly lost. The Pegasus slowly stood and sauntered over with a hungry gleam in her eyes. Oh, poor Applejack, she cooed in a manner a mother might gently correct her children. I already have help. Isn't that right, cheerily? At once, the pressure on her back was released and Applejack was flipped over to stare into the slitted eyes of the beast, which was cheerily. Her fur no longer carried its magenta hue, dimpled to the dull gray of a cold killer. From where her hooves should have been sprouted the sharp talons, still dragging deeply into Applejack's side. A wicked grin displayed her fangs, glistening with drool. Applejack tried to punch the beast off of her, to earn her some time to run off for help, but the beast responded with a punch of her own. Dazed and with ears ringing from the hit, Applejack's eyes fell to Fluttershy. The Pegasus began convulsing, her well-groomed coat rapidly growing ragged and unkempt as its color drained to the same steely gray as Cheerily. As a set of talons presented themselves on her hooves, her feathers began drooping out as her wings shrunk into her body, leaving her with a bare back, and a new set of pointed teeth glinted in the moonlight. When she opened her eyes, however, they were the same soft aquamarine eyes the mare always wore, but now carried a glint of fuel hunger. You're a changeling. A what? Changeling? Cheerily laughed, leaning in close to Applejack's bruised and bloodied muzzle. The stench of death wafted out from between her teeth as they spoke. Hardly. We're much more deadly. Oh, Fluttershy, can't you take the first bite? She is, well, was, your friend, after all. Please, don't do this, Applejack pleaded. Let me go. I promise. I won't tell nobody. Cheerily clicked her teeth in disapproval. Double negative, she teased. Please! She shouted at the beast, which was once Fluttershy, readying to strike. Tears were beginning to stain her bloodied coat. Just let me live. The strong cow pony broke down into hysterical sobs, unable to control herself any longer. Fluttershy's expression of hungry malice softened into one of compassion. There, don't cry, she cooed in her motherly tone, stroking Applejack's cheek as though she were but a frightened filly. It'll all be over soon. The last thing Applejack saw was Fluttershy lunging for her throat. The next day. Ew, what is that? Sweetie Belle asked, contemplating the strange object sitting on her teacher's desk. It looks like a rotten apple, Scootaloo added, a look of disgust on her features. Miss Cherry said it was a model of a pony's heart, a depressed Apple Bloom reported. Ugh, are you still moping about your sister running off to help your cousin last night? Scootaloo asked. A slow nod was her only response, before she could fire back how Rainbow Dash had been missing for the last 3 days. The schoolhouse door opened. Good morning, class, cheerily greeted. Today we're starting a new lesson. Anatomy. And so, my little ponies, that wraps up our scary tale for tonight. Please feel free to watch one of my other stories of adventure, of heroes, of friendship, of love, and of spooks and frights. Thank you, and good night. Brody on.